Julie was a transgender person. And the amazing part about it is, as much as she did for the community, I could now amaze you with Julie's stories and never mention the word transgender again. Because Julie was an interesting person. Julie was an amazing person. She was strong and kind and generous and very devout. She was far and away the most devout Christian in my life. Though I am not a religious person, Julie and I were tight friends, never proselytized each other, and I know that Julie got much of her strength from her religion. And she was strong. She was somebody who was integral in the founding of our organization, the National Center for Transgender Equality. She is somebody who I called on often for advice and just strength, because sometimes it's really, really hard in the trenches, and sometimes you need somebody to be strong with you, and Julie was that person for me. Julie was extremely kind. She told me that she was a lot kinder after she transitioned. She was a lot nicer after she transitioned, and we hear that from a lot of people. I find it hard to believe because I never knew Julie as anything but kind. And she was generous. Julie, I think, will be remembered in the history of transgender people as the first transgender philanthropist of our time. She was a small business owner in Chicago, but gave generously to transgender and other causes. She was one of the largest donors in the history of NCTE. We could always count on her for financial support in addition to her strength and knowledge. She has been amazing to the Chicago Gender Society and the Illinois Gender Advocates. She was the founder of the T-Self Awards, and I should say the founder and the funder of the largest funder, if not the only funder, of the T-Self Awards, which gave college scholarships to transgender people who were going into the helping professions. She had been the board chair of IFGE. She was a supporter of every one of the conferences as far as I know. She went to them, she donated money to them, she provided technical support to a lot of the conferences in the way of sound and light support. And a couple days before Julie passed away in February, I was at her home in West Chicago. And we were talking about all the things she did. And I tried for her to help her understand how many people she had touched. You know, running Be All for 10 or 15 years, that in itself meant 400 or 500 people a year whose lives were immeasurably improved, and in many cases whose lives were saved. But everything she did with the Chicago Gender Society, and everything she did at NCTE and IFGE. And you know, every year she had a garden party at her home because she knew that a lot of transgender people didn't get to go to nice places. So at her beautiful home in the suburbs of Chicago, she threw a beautiful garden party every year, until recently when her health disallowed it. And I just want to note something also that's amazing. Julie will keep giving to us because of the wisdom she left us, but also as part of her estate, she's left a foundation that will be supporting the causes she cared about for years. And she thought of us even after she was gone. And I should just say, to let you know how Julie will keep giving, I got the word that a very dear friend of hers in her name has offered a $5,000 gift to my organization, $5,000 matching gift. I should probably take that opportunity to say that, in Julie's name. Julie was a very big supporter of NCTE, and this person, thank you, by the way, this person believed that Julie would have wanted another gift to NCTE. But the last thing, I just want to talk really quickly about the most important lesson I think we can learn from Julie. Yes, we need to be kind and strong and generous and devout, and whatever your beliefs are, whether they're religious beliefs or not, really believe them with everything in your heart and really live like they mean something to you. And yeah, we have to learn all of that. But I want to tell you what I've been fortunate. I was able to speak at Julie's funeral service, and I struggled for days. I was really broken up. She really meant a lot to me and to a lot of people, and I was really broken up, and I didn't know what to say at her funeral service. And I thought, and I was like, what was different about Julie? And what it was is she was so interesting. And I know that seems sort of an odd thing for somebody whose job is transgender activist, and talking to somebody who was an amazing pioneer transgender activist, to focus on her being interesting. But how many people here, by the way, have ever been at Julie's home? Okay, so a bunch of people. If you've been at Julie's home, you know that it was a museum with this quirky curator who knew everything about tens of thousands of things in her home. I had the fortune about a month ago to go back to her home. Some of us who were doing some work for her posthumously got to go to her home, and we were looking around, and we went up to the bedroom that is full of nothing but antique cheerleading uniforms. She had something, I mean, really, there were racks and racks of them. There easily must have been 500 or 1,000 antique cheerleading uniforms. Then we went across the hall to the antique swimsuit room. Also on that floor, there had been, but it was gone, she had the largest collection of railroad station clocks. Those have all gone to her beloved Illinois Train Museum. She had her basement, which was this was a huge house. It had been built by a railroad baron as a summer home at the turn of the last century, and Julie, as many of you might know, was a big train person. She was what I think some of us call a train sexual. She was everything for her. She loved railroads, and she was the largest sponsor of the Illinois Train Museum, or Illinois Railroad Museum, and she'd been on their board. And another room, she had a lot of panoramic photos, you know, the ones that are really long. She loved those. She had cameras. And my favorite thing in her house were orchestrions. Now, very few people know what orchestrions are anymore. I sure didn't until the first time I was at Julie's house. What orchestrions are basically player pianos, but with lots of other instruments. She had one that was 3 violins that played on a roll, like a player piano, but it was 3 violins that played by themselves. And another one had a piano, a drum, and a trumpet. Another one was just a piano and a couple other things, and she had like 7 of these. And they're huge, and they made these amazing booming noises because they were made not for people's homes, but for dance halls. But Julie loved these, and she had this amazing collection of them. She also had one of the best and most complete collections of transgender literature, which she was very proud of and collected. But the thing was, she was so interesting. She was a transgender person. She was so proud of being a transgender person. She worked herself off. She worked herself a lot to help transgender people. She cared so much about all the transgender people in Chicago and around the country. But she was so much more than just transgender, and I think some of us sometimes get in the trap. It is an important thing in our lives. It isn't the only thing in our lives. We have to remember to be interesting. We have to remember to have interests and to be passionate about things and to fight for the things we believe in. So I want to ask us tonight, in Julie's memory, and really in the memory of all of the folks we've lost from our community and our family, that we remember to do some things. Let's be strong. Let's be kind. Let's really live up to our beliefs. And let's really be interesting people. Julie, I love you, and I miss you, and I thank you for all of your gifts to all of us. Thank you very much. And Lexi asked me to remind you that NCT will be having a reception right after this dinner up in room 1221. And I'd be happy, particularly to hear remembrances of Julie and the other folks we've lost. But please come and join us if you'd like. We'll be up in 1221. Thank you, everybody. I love you.